You know what's something I've noticed has become sort of like a trend as of late? The idea of making a platformer fighter as a bonus game mode. And I don't really have an issue with that, but the way I look at anything really, not just platformer fighters, is that if you're gonna make the effort to create some kind of mode or add something to your game, at least make it good. Don't add some kind of, garbage just to say you added garbage, right? I can do without the garbage. But I realized that with two games, Shovel Knight is something that's been going on for quite some time already. But if you're unaware, Shovel Knight Showdown has become a thing. It's kind of like a bonus mode to Treasure Trove. And another game from Arc Systems of all companies, Code Shifters, which is kind of a weird thing, and both of them kind of have a situation where they essentially made a bonus mode that is a platformer fighter in the vein of, Super Smash Brothers, Rivals of Aether, Slap City, as just, an extra thing. But I feel that this is a very interesting approach, and I think, like I said, if you're gonna add something to the game, make sure it's not garbage. I'd rather not have garbage than choose to have it, if that makes sense. And I feel like these two games both looked at it in a very similar mindset, but the way they approached it was wildly different. Now, if you guys want, I'll make a separate video for each of these two games I'm talking about, being Shovel Knight Showdown and Code Shifters, which I am already planning on doing, so hopefully, I'll get to that. And I feel that the way Shovel Knight Showdown did it is leagues better than Code Shifters. And like I said, if you guys want me to go into details, I'll go into them in separate videos for each of the games involved. But there's just, you can tell that while Shovel Knight Showdown is not exactly the focus of Shovel Knight, that there is a lot you can do with it, and maybe even like, foster a competitive scene in this game. I'm not gonna sit here and say that every game that comes out that is a platformer fighter has the potential to be competitive. There are games that are competitive, like Brawlhalla, that I'm just not a fan of, that are platformer fighters, and games that I wish was successful, they're not. They're they're defunct, or whatever the case may be. So obviously I'm not the perfect representation of what I consider to be a good platformer fighter. But I just feel like if you've played both Shovel Knight Showdown and Code Shifters like I have, there is a very, very obvious and wide divide in terms of how they treated the two. Yacht Club, when it came to Shovel Knight Showdown, like I said, it's obvious it was not the focus, but they did not skimp out on it. There's, bonus game modes, there's campaigns, there's, items and multiple maps and rule sets, and a lot of customizable options, and there's a lot of really good things that Shovel Knight Showdown did. Like, I'm not gonna say it's the perfect game for any reason whatsoever. Like, there's a lot of faults. It does have a lot of faults. But I feel that the pros outweigh the cons, especially when you consider that it was never really supposed to be a focus. I believe Shovel Knight Showdown was just like a random stretch goal on the Kickstarter, and they got that far and they had to make it. And for what it is, it's really good. And Code Shifters is on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, where they have a bonus game mode. I think it's called Colorful Fighters, and it is very obviously inspired by like platformer fighters before it. Most importantly Smash Brothers, because that's like the only like really well-known one. And there's a lot of issues with it. It has almost the exact opposite problem as Shovel Knight, where Shovel Knight, despite being a bonus game mode, has all these options. Code Shifters just seems like it has nothing. And there's just so much that Shovel Knight Showdown does that's so much better, and it made me wonder why these two games looked at the platformer fighter genre so similarly, but executed it so differently from each other. And I think it might be, a matter of how these development studios kind of look at the game that they're making. Shovel Knight is kind of like Yacht Club's baby, right? They don't want to put out garbage, right? They want to, even if it is a bonus mode that was just like a stretch goal and they didn't initially plan on making this in any capacity, you can tell that they're very proud of what they do. They're very passionate about what they do. So even if this was, you know, some kind of bonus game mode, which by the way, you can actually buy Shovel Knight Showdown on its own for I think like $10. So that says a lot on its own, I think. But they clearly care enough about this game that they did not want to put out something that would make it look bad. While Arc Systems is kind of, for all intents and purposes, the king of fighting games right now. And people usually would say Capcom because of Street Fighter and Marvel, but like, other than Marvel 2 making a comeback and Street Fighter 5 doing, you know, alright, Guilty Gear Strive is coming out. Blaze Blue was an Evo. You still have Grand Blue coming out. Dragon Ball Fighters. It's like Arc Systems just doesn't fail. They don't fail. So when I saw that they were coming out with some kind of, you know, platformer fighter, I got kind of excited. I'm not gonna lie, I got kind of excited because these guys are kind of like the kings of the FGC at this point, and they make so many good fighting games back to back. So when I saw that they were kind of entering the platformer fighter side of things, I got excited. Little did I know that they clearly didn't really care too much, and probably because they have so many other bigger things going on, like Grand Blue, like Dragon Ball Fighter Season 3, and you know, things of that nature, that Colorful Fighters on, was it Code Shifter, it just doesn't matter. Like, it's just so bare bones. It's like the most bare bones you could possibly go with a platformer fighter, and I think that's kind of on purpose. I feel like Code Shifters is a cash cow, and that sounds kind of like an insult, but I really do believe this is what it is. It's a very cheap indie game that clearly did not take a lot of money to make, and they probably was hoping that if they cross over Blaze Blue, River City, you know, Guilty Gear, and all these other franchises that are under Arc Systems, that they're kind of hoping the people would look past, you know, the insanely shallow content just to see Soul Bad Guy versus Ragnar the Blood Edge. You know, like, I think that's kind of the idea behind this game. I don't think there was really that much passion behind it, or maybe there was passion behind it and just the budget and team was so small that they just couldn't do much with it. I don't know, but you can tell it's not there. And I think, like, in the future, when it comes to games that are focused primarily on being a platformer fighter, you know, like Rivals of Aether, like Slap City, I think those are games I will be taking very seriously and try to see if it's competitively viable. But if it's, you know, a bonus mode, I'm not going to expect as much as I did. I was really disappointed with Code Shifters, and I don't know. I could see that it wasn't the focus, and that's okay, but it's clearly not meant to be anything deeper than what it is. It's a very casual thing, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with a casual side of things, but the way I look at it, even as a casual game and just as a game on its own single player content, not even like the fighting side of it, it's just not very fun. And it doesn't look very interesting either. Like, I don't really like the art style too much. I don't know. There's a lot of things to talk about there, and I'm probably going to make an entire video primarily dedicated to both Shovel Knight Showdown and Code Shifters. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, make sure you do. I'm going to get to that as soon as I can. I have some ideas for it, and I'll get to it. But I've been playing a good amount of Shovel Knight Showdown. I've played it with a few friends, and I've been trying to try out Code Shifters with some friends, but Code Shifters is kind of being very, very annoying about rules, and it's hard to explain, but I'll get into it when I get into it in the next video. So until then, you know, let me know how you guys feel about, you know, platformer fighters being a bonus game mode and not necessarily like a, you know, a genre to focus on for some of these companies. Like, I don't want to see another Code Shifters happen where some really well-known fighting game company, you know, like Capcom or something, just makes a crossover fighting game and it's like a really cheaply made, you know, thing that just doesn't have any depth to it. Like, I want to see actual effort be put into these things, and it's weird to see an indie company make a platformer fighter that is leagues better than a big company that essentially dominates the fighting game genre right now, and that's just so weird to me. But I digress. Just let me know how you guys feel about this. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm not in the most positive mindset about it, but let me know in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it. All the good stuff that YouTube loves themselves. And yeah, until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.